Hello, I'm Chris, the Tabletop Fox, and welcome to my video on Halo Flashpoint, particularly the UNSC faction and reviewing their units and how they are in Season 1. In this video I'll be looking at the two variants of the Brawler. So, in the last episode we discussed the Deadeye, the shooting unit, the one that is very specialised towards that. And in this one we'll be doing almost the opposite. It's still a specialised unit, but it's doing it in the fighting ability. So it has a 3-up fight and a 5-up shoot. And that is where the Brawler comes in. Elsewise, the Brawler doesn't have anything particularly special. It doesn't have any special keywords like the Deadeye does. And it's just the base Spartan frame. But having a 2-3 movement on a very specialised melee unit is in some cases very special, and it makes this unit very good, especially now in Season 1. In Season 0 there were struggles with the idea of using it in the same way the Deadeye, and that is because you didn't really want to kill, you wanted to go for the objectives more, and a Brawler was sometimes too lethal, and it added in that it was pretty much the same points as a Mark 7, which could pretty much do the same as the Brawler was doing, slightly less efficient at hitting with the melee, but with a lot more versatility. However, now we're in Season 1 with Husky, the Brawler has shone a bit here. He's also gone down a little bit in points, making him a very cheap unit for what you get, with the Needle variant being 41 points with a knife. So going back to something I touched on with melee, and that is that when it comes to objective play, melee is usually the strongest tool you can have. Because you can shoot people across the map, you can shoot them off the objectives, but a lot of the objectives require you to also be on the objectives. So strongholds, be on it at the end of the round without the opponent being there. Extraction, get onto the objective, have a short action left to plant or defuse. And King of the Hill, again, be on the objective really at the end of the round. You don't have to be, but you need to get on there to place your flag when there is no opponents alive in there. And while shooting units can get the people off those hills, if they can't get in and shoot them off, they will struggle. And that is where melee really doesn't. And with a 3-up on his melee, and the base combat knife being pretty damn decent, having ESD1, AP2, it means they're quite effective at killing with just that knife, and for that they're very cheap. However, if you throw on something like a hammer or a sword, they become godly when it comes into melee, because you've got a higher hit chance than anyone but Chief has a save. When you're charging, your minimum is 5 dice, 6 with a hammer. So you are going to do some work with that, because unlike with shooting where you can be in a situation where you have equal dice, when charging with melee there are very few occasions where you can have equal dice as a defender. And putting on to that, if you want to go really killy, put a sword on them, the lethality, unless your dice are failing you or the opponents are going incredibly well, is just too much for pretty much any unit. Armor 3 being the highest armor without adding a hard light shield, the sword goes straight through it. ESD 2 clears a Spartan shield straight unless it's Chief, or an elite in that case. And then it has lethal on top of that, where it means 1 less dice when it goes through. And this is one of those places where lethal is very good, because a sword is pretty much always going through. If you're only getting 1 success over an elite or Chief with a Brawler, then you're really in other troubles as well. Because if you're hitting on a 3-up, you shouldn't be getting that outcome. And then the hammer, even more so, it's incredibly lethal with a Brawler, even if they try to run away. Because if you've come in, not killed them, and pinned them up against the wall, they're in trouble because they're stand up, and likely you've done damage to them. But even if not, you're hitting with 4 dice, you're going to put them back into that wall. If you are in with them for any other reason and they then try to break away, you're just going to either kill them or hit them against the wall. So a hammer brawler is an incredibly scary opponent to come up against, because it can just ruin your day, especially if your list is focused a lot on melee itself, such as sword elites. The biggest problem you will have with the brawler is if it's not getting to the melee, it's going to struggle to be effective with shooting, and that can be a problem. Fortunately, as mentioned, because of its movement, it's helped out there, and you're likely going to be equipping it with movement items as well to help it out on that occasion to get to places it needs to be. And other than that, the other main problem it has is it still quite heavily competes with the Mark 7 with the pulse carbine. Now the Mark 7, of course, like the first season, isn't as effective in melee. It's slightly more expensive, being 43 with a knife. However, the Mark 7 has that versatility alongside having tactician. So you can kind of think of it as well where the Mark 7 could be getting a move dice or a fight dice. So it either has that bonus where it can get into the melee when the brawler couldn't if it hadn't got an advanced dice, or it can fight again to make up for the one less on its fight. But if it doesn't need to fight again, or it doesn't need to get in, then it's helping the rest of the team more. You add in as well a 4-up to a 3-up. It's a good improvement, but a 4-up is also very solid. And then the ability to also shoot just gives that Mark 7 that edge, I feel, over a brawler in a lot of occasions. However, you can't fully discount it because the Mark 7 isn't as scary in that situation, and the one where you're likely to put a hammer on is a lot more expensive. Being without the knife, 38 versus 45, so 7 points difference. So if you add a hammer to both, there's still 7 points difference, which at that point you can add the extra command dice per round for quite a balanced going off each other. And this is me talking about the Needler Brawler, which we'll get to, but has pinning, so he has that ability that the Mark 7 already has in that situation. So if you are wanting something that's very heavily melee focused and going with a hammer, the Brawler actually is probably the better choice in regards to the Mark 7. But if you do want that versatility, adding in the ability to shoot as well and just running a knife, then the Mark 7 with the pulse carbine is probably the better choice. However, if you just want a cheap unit that you can just throw at the enemy to let everyone else get tanked up on points and such, then putting a Brawler with a needler and a knife and just throwing it at objectives, come get that flag, don't have to worry about losing your pickup weapon, just throw it at the enemy. It's a very good tool for that. And I can see it getting picked up a bit more depending on the game modes and tournaments. I've already seen it quite a bit. But going on to the actual weapons themselves, it's another one where it's quite clear cut. So we have the original Recon one, which was the Bulldog version. So this is a range 2 shotgun with AP2, lethal 1. It's not a terrible stat line. It goes straight through Spartan armor and is lethal. And as I mentioned, lethal is good if you've got the AP to back it up. However, it doesn't have any ESD, so you're going to have to clear out their shields first. It doesn't have anything like optics or weight of fire, so you're not getting any extra dice or ability to crit or rerolls to help out with the Brawler being on a 5-up. And if it does succeed, it has knockback, which if you can angle it so they go into a wall, gives you a chance at pinning them, a good chance. But that relies on you getting that perfect angle. And if you don't get that, then you're going to knock them away from you. And if you already moved to get close, and then you needed the grapple in, that would mean possibly losing out on the kill. So you're not going to use it in that situation, but it just shows that it's not as useful as you'd want it to be. And on the other hand, you have, I believe it's just 1 point more. I believe it's 37 versus 38 points. You have the needle version. And while the needle is not very lethal, it does lose out on the Bulldog on that. We are using a model with a bad shoot stat, so lethality in shooting is not something we're worried about. what the kneeler does have is rapid fire and way to fire 1, which is a perfect combo for the Brawler because he can shoot him. It's range free, so if you're pinning him up to go into a charge, then you are most likely already in charge range with that. If they are out of its range, then you most likely aren't probably charging them anyway. And if you are charging them when they're outside of free range, you're going to have a grapple or move dice, so you can move in, then do it, and then move in. Outside of sprinted, of course. So it's a very good chance of pinning because a lot of enemies have a 5-up save. So if you're rolling 4 dice versus their 3 dice and you get 1 reroll, there's a higher chance that you succeed than they do. And even into 4-up saves, it should go in your favour because of having the extra dice, which is the equivalent of having 5 dice when you're firing with a 5-up model, as mentioned before, because you're probably going to fail 1 at least, so you're going to use that reroll. So there is a clear choice of which you're going to go. For a point, you get something that actually benefits you, because that extra dice when you're running a knife brawler can mean the death for them. The ability to counteract their snapshot is incredible, and if you really don't need it, it's still something you can just pop into another unit and then charge into the one you're going to charge, so you can debilitate 2 units in the same round, pinning one up and either killing or tying the other one up in combat. As mentioned with the Brawler, you're going to want to go with combat knife or gravity hammer or sword. You're not going to really want to put a gun on him. You could argue putting a grenade launcher on him and running a knife. It's not the worst idea, but in that situation then it starts to go, do you go with a Mark 7 because then the grenade launcher is a bit more reliable, and also you're putting a bit of investment into a heavy melee one, same as with putting the Deadeye, giving him a knife or giving him no extra weapon. You're not putting the investment into where they specialise, and you're trying to make them more well-rounded, which can help, but usually if you want well-rounded, go with a unit that's built for well-roundedness. If you want specialisation, you go with the units that are specialised in doing that craft. And then, of course, with that, you put on a grapple. It's a very clear one. And then the same comes up with either a thruster, active camo, or quantum. Thruster's a clear one because that ability to get into the opponent's deployment turn 1 a lot of time. And if he respawns and doesn't get instantly killed off, then you can use it again to help with that movement. So thruster is good on them, but with a respawn it can have its negatives. Active camo is great because you can also use that to bypass snapshots, especially, well, you can't use it anymore to bypass snapshot directly, but it makes them have a -2 to their shoot with it. But it also can mean you can get the Brawler somewhere, even get him stuck in combat, then pop the active camo just to make it so the opponent can't do a huge deal with him next round, or it'll be difficult for them, so he's set up in a really good position for the next round. So you're losing out on that one move in the first turn to have a better position in the second turn. And quantum, of course, if you're running the hammer, is a really good choice. I explained it with the Mark 7, but just to touch on it again, you can knock back with hammer. If you put a quantum outside of them, you can then quantum into the cube that you knock them back into, well, knock them back into the one you quantumed, and then get to do another fight without the charge dice. But again, that's going to be 4 to 5 dice if the Brawler's damaged them on the first hit still, and with a Brawler that's usually enough to finish if you're on a second hammer attack on them anyway. If not, I'm a bit more worried about how the dice rolling's gone for you. Then the other tricks are you can knock them into a wall and then quantum out and then either charge back into them or charge into someone else. So you can just damage, pin up, and then leave them alive if you wanted to, if they didn't die. Or even you can put the quantum somewhere, run into one person, quantum back because you were right next to another one that you wanted to go into after, and then go into them with a grapple or a move dice. And it gives you so many options with the melee ability, alongside the ability to get people out of King of the Hill hills and other scenarios. Strongholds, you could be on a hill, put the quantum down, run into another hill, hit them off, and then probably have to grapple back So you're within 2 now, but then teleport back to your hill, cleared them off, and still hold a hill, which for a melee unit is very useful because that's where shooting units usually are the better choice because they don't have to move from the hill. But if you can make it so you get back on the hill after doing the work, then it's an amazing bonus there. But that has been the Brawler. It's a solid unit. I do rank it highly, especially the Needler version. I think it could be seen in more lists, but people have gone a bit anemic to melee a lot of the moment for some reason, especially with Oddball being very melee focused now, and stuff like Headhunter where you want to move the skulls and still having all the objectives while also getting kill points, so the lethality of melee is actually a positive a lot of the time, not a negative. I'm not sure why you haven't seen it more. Maybe I said the Mark 7's taking more favour, as it is with me at the moment because of what I'm running. But if you put a Brawler in your list with a knife and just some items, no pickup weapon, you're going to have a great time with it. If you put one in with a hammer, the opponent's going to be scared to death. Put it in with a sword, you know you're going to kill stuff. It does what it does it well, and generally it feels a bit better as an overall pick than the Deadeye because it's a lot less investment and it has a lot more versatility with objectives. It's able to do objectives as well as being specialised in killing, and that's what makes it great. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there's anything you disagree with in my thoughts about the unit or anything you think I missed, please feel free to let me know in the comments. But with that, I've been the Tabletop Fox. I hope you have a lovely day, and ta-ra!